Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today as we dive into the incredible world of numismatics, the unexpected treasures hiding in your pocket change, and specifically the unbelievable story of how a single 1997 P. Roosevelt dime became valued at an astonishing $132 million, a figure that sounds impossible at first but becomes clearer once you understand the perfect storm of minting errors, rarity, historical context, collector demand, and the evolving psychology of the numismatic market that transformed this tiny 10-cent coin into one of the most mesmerizing and sought-after pieces of modern US coinage. And as we journey into this story, imagine picking up a roll of dimes from the bank, casually flipping through them, and suddenly discovering a coin that has the wrong metal composition, the wrong strike pressure, multiple anomalies in both the obverse and reverse, and physical characteristics so unique that every expert in the field would gasp at the sight of it, because that is precisely the kind of mythical scenario collectors dream about, and the reason the legend of the 1997 P dime worth $132 million continues to spark fascination around the world. Beginning with a basic understanding of the Roosevelt dime itself and why the year 1997 matters in the modern numismatic timeline. Since the United States Mint had long since transitioned from the silver composition used prior to 1965 and was comfortably striking copper-nickel-clad dimes for daily use, meaning that any disruption in this highly standardized minting process could create an anomaly, and those anomalies are the foundation of extraordinary value, especially when the mistake is so extreme that it defies ordinary classification, like the infamous wrong planchette strikes, double dies, off-center errors, mint mark irregularities, or surface anomalies such as die cracks, machine doubling, strike-throughs, or intentionally altered planchets that slip past mint quality control. And so when collectors refer to the mythical 1997 P dime worth $132 million, they point to a specimen that reportedly emerged from the Philadelphia Mint under circumstances so unusual that no other known dime has matched it in absolute rarity. And what makes its story so compelling is how multiple errors intersected on a single coin, forming an impossibly rare numismatic trifecta: a wrong metal composition, a nearly uncirculated strike, and an off-axis die misalignment, the kind of combination that not only shouldn't have happened but practically could not happen under normal minting conditions, which raises questions about how the Philadelphia Mint could produce such an oversight in the late 1990s when technology was supposed to be more precise than ever. And yet history shows us that even the most advanced machines fail, die deterioration happens unexpectedly, and mint workers do not catch every mistake before coins enter circulation. And when such a mistake escapes the mint and ends up in public hands, the potential value rockets upward, because collectors do not merely buy a piece of metal, they buy a story, they buy the proof of impossibility, and they buy a moment preserved forever in numismatic time. So consider the first error attributed to the legendary 1997 P dime: the wrong planchette composition, meaning that rather than being struck on the expected copper-nickel-clad planchette, the coin was allegedly struck on a 90% silver planchette, or possibly a foreign alloy intended for a different denomination or international minting contract, and this alone would be worth a fortune because metal composition mismatches are among the most desirable errors in US coinage, particularly those originating after 1965, since modern silver errors are exceedingly rare, and when a coin struck in the wrong material is paired with a second major error like a double die obverse, where the portrait of Franklin D. Roosevelt shows distinct doubling around the nose, lips, or eye region, and a reverse showing heavy doubling in the torch flame, branches, and lettering of E pluribus unum, you suddenly enter the category of once-in-a-lifetime rarities, and the value leaps to unimaginable heights, because collectors understand that a double die error is not the same as machine doubling. It originates from the die itself during manufacture, meaning the mistake exists in the die used to strike many coins, not from pressure bounce or vibration during the minting strike. And this elevates its desirability tremendously, especially when preserved in high grade, where every ridge and duplicated contour is crisp and unmistakable. And now imagine that same coin is also the result of a dramatic misalignment of the dies, meaning the obverse and reverse designs are rotated several degrees off-center when compared to each other. And although rotated die errors are not unprecedented, the severity of the rotation matters greatly, since most errors are slight, often 5 or 10 degrees, but legends surrounding this 1997 P-dime report a rotation so pronounced that the horizontal axis of alignment appears twisted by nearly 45 degrees, and if so, then we are dealing with a monstrously rare combination: wrong composition, double die, and rotated strike. And if this trifecta is still not enough to justify the estimated $132 million valuation, additional micro-level anomalies reportedly pushed it beyond anything the coin-collecting world had seen from a modern circulation dime, including incomplete strike areas due to uneven pressure, where the bands on the torch appear semi-blurred at the center while the olive branch veins remain sharply defined, indicating a staggered strike inconsistency, potentially caused by a worn striking surface or a press malfunction, and on top of that, subtle but unmistakable die cracks branching from the rim toward the Roosevelt portrait flank the left side of the coin, resembling spiderweb fractures beginning near the date and extending toward the designer initials JS, and these cracks are not accidental surface scratches created post-mint but rather structural flaws formed during die deterioration, which freeze in time the weakened state of the die used to imprint the coin, and all of these features together form a kind of numismatic supernova, a perfect alignment of manufacturing errors nearly impossible to replicate. And because ultra-rare coins are not valued simply by metal content or face value but by historical importance, rarity, mythology, and the chaos of circumstances that produced them, this one dime defies conventional pricing, becoming more like a priceless artifact than a piece of everyday currency, and that is why collectors speculate such astronomical amounts for it, because when a coin is one of one, its price is limited only by the highest bidder willing to possess it, and this idea is not fantasy but proven across past numismatic auctions, where coins like the 1933 St. Gordon's Double Eagle, once illegal to own, sold for tens of millions, or the rarest Lincoln cents have sold for prices unthinkable to everyday buyers, and because passionate collectors seek symbolic ownership of mistakes, owning the tangible evidence of imperfection produced within the machinery of the U.S. Mint, the 1997 P-dime becomes more than a coin. It becomes a trophy, a cultural artifact of minting failure, a power piece, and therefore stories circulate among collectors about private sales, unverified trades, or insurance values reaching as high as $132 million, even if the public never sees it displayed like a museum relic. And so the coin becomes myth, hidden away in vaults or private collections, occasionally whispered about in numismatic forums or coin club rumor mills, and the idea of it reappearing sparks excitement like a treasure hunt, because every time a collector opens a bankroll, every time someone empties their pocket change, every time a family sorts through old coin jars, they think maybe, just maybe, they will stumble upon the next impossible dime, because the world of mint errors is not ruled by logic but by chance, and chance plays favorites in unpredictable ways, especially when millions of coins are produced each year, each one representing a microcosm of mechanical pressure, die wear, metal cleanliness, human oversight, and environmental conditions, meaning that any combination of failure can slip through unnoticed, and so collectors scour dime dates like 1997 P, not because all are valuable, but because they know the mint had production cycles in which die replacements were rushed, inspection was inconsistent, or planches were mixed in error due to overlapping schedules between proof strikes, clad circulation strikes, and test batches, and even more intriguing is the possibility of intentional errors, rare but whispered about in numismatic folklore, where mint workers allegedly produce anomalies either as curiosities or mistakes covered up out of embarrassment, and though such stories are rarely proven, they fuel imagination and speculation about high-value coins, making the 1997 P-dime an icon of modern era lore. And when you examine the psychology of coin collecting, it becomes clear why such pieces gain momentum, because collectors crave narrative and uniqueness, and when one coin. Next 2007 D1 dime coin. Today we are going to dive into the mystery of the 2007 D Roosevelt dime, A coin that in one specific example has been rumored to be worth an astonishing $135 million due to a combination of extreme minting errors, production anomalies, and unique circumstances that make it unlike anything else ever seen in circulation. And whether you are a seasoned numismatist or someone who has just recently started checking your pocket change, this is the kind of story that makes you look twice at every dime you come across, because the tale of this coin blends history, accident, speculation, and even conspiracy, and it begins in 2007 at the Denver Mint, where billions of coins were struck as usual, but deep within the massive production systems something went catastrophically out of alignment, leading to a handful of error coins that would later shock the collecting world. And among these coins was one particular dime that defied all logic and expectations, a dime whose physical inconsistencies were so extreme that it became an obsession for professionals who tried to explain how it could even exist in the first place, eventually elevating it to a mythical status and inflating its estimated market value into hundreds of millions, a value so incredible that it seems unreal until you understand the full scope of its mistakes, because this coin, unlike ordinary errors such as simple off-center strikes or minor die cracks, contains layers of minting defects, stacked on top of each other like geological strata, each one amplifying the value exponentially, and collectors know that when multiple errors occur simultaneously and verifiably, the resulting coin becomes rarer than rare, and that is what happened here, starting with a misalignment of the dies so severe that the portrait of Franklin D. Roosevelt appears shifted dramatically upward, causing his chin to nearly touch the rim and leaving the lower left field empty, which immediately indicates a major strike error, but that was only the beginning, because then the outer clad layer failed to bond properly with the inner copper core during the planchette preparation stage, creating a partial missing clad error where sections of the surface expose raw copper, giving the coin a bizarre two-tone effect that no normal dime should ever display, and this alone would usually be enough to catapult a coin into 5- or 6-figure territory, as missing clad and dramatic misalignment occur together only under chaotic mint conditions. But with the 2007 $1 million dime there were more issues tangled into the metal itself, specifically a double strike phenomenon where the coin was struck once, ejected improperly, then struck again at a slight rotation, giving Roosevelt's image a ghost-like second profile hovering above the first, and careful inspection of the lettering reveals duplicated edges around the words Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 2007, causing collectors to whisper about a triple strike, something so rare that only a handful of examples have ever been authenticated in American coinage history. And still the weirdness does not end there, because along the reverse, the torch and olive branches also show doubling, but not in the traditional numismatic sense of hub doubling, instead showing mechanical restriking distortion, evidence that the planchette was never properly stabilized in the coining press, suggesting that the coin briefly jammed before being forced out violently, compressing and stretching the metal in unnatural ways, resulting in warped rims that bulge outward on the northeast edge while tapering sharply at the opposite side, and those rim anomalies create an almost crescent moon shape when viewed from certain angles, something that graders rarely encounter and often deem impossible, fueling theories that this dime was produced during a catastrophic malfunction that affected multiple minting systems at once, and it is precisely that sense of near impossibility that transformed this particular dime into a phenomenon, because if a single minor mistake can fetch thousands, imagine a coin containing misaligned strike, partial missing clad, double strike rotation, reverse distortion, warped rims, and a rescue ejected metal stress signature, all wrapped inside a coin that was never supposed to exist beyond a few milliseconds inside a high-speed industrial press, and that is where the speculation skyrockets, because collectors, auction houses, and private investors began speculating about what such a coin could sell for if it ever entered the open market, and in private circles the number $135 million began circulating, not as a joke but as an estimate representing a once-in-history artifact, similar to how ultra-rare paintings or archaeological treasures achieve unimaginable valuation because there is no true comparison, and some even believe that because this coin is tied to the modern minting era, where quality control is extremely strict and documentation exists, The odds of such a multifaceted mistake happening again are nearly zero, creating a perfect storm of rarity, meaning that whoever owned it would possess the only known specimen of its kind, something beyond collectible, bordering on historical anomaly, and that perception of absolute uniqueness drives emotional bidding, which is how items in the numismatic world leap from hundreds of thousands into tens of millions, and indeed if we examine why this particular 2007 D dime could reach $135 million, the answer lies not only in its errors but also in its documented chain of custody, because the coin reportedly passed through multiple hands before reaching a collector connected with a network of elite investors, each one adding to its story, each one terrified of exposing it to public auction, yet eager to claim ownership of the world's rarest modern dime, and that secrecy only intensifies the myth, making people wonder whether this dime is more than a coin, perhaps a symbol of how unpredictable the minting process can be, how microscopic deviations in temperature, pressure, die wear, or feeder systems can create a piece of metal that forces experts to question everything they know about mint mechanics, pushing the boundaries of why coins are valued not simply as currency but as artifacts of mechanical and historical randomness. And when specialists examined this dime, they allegedly noticed microfracture lines inside the copper core, indicating long-term stress, something that would only occur if the planchette was overheated, repressed, or subjected to manual handling during a mint malfunction, and that detail suggests that a human may have intervened during the mint's chaotic moment, whether intentionally or accidentally, creating a hybrid accident and interference coin, which in the eyes of collectors elevates it from a printing mistake into a once-in-a-lifetime collectible that bridges machine error and human fate. And then comes the wildest possibility of all, that this dime was never supposed to leave the mint, that it was a hold piece, a diagnostic specimen meant to demonstrate what the malfunction produced, and someone improperly allowed it to escape into circulation or possession, which would make it similar to the legendary 1933 Double Eagle situation where items not legally authorized to exist became priceless simply because they slipped beyond official mint jurisdiction. And therefore some collectors believe the 2007 D-era dime transcends normal valuation rules, existing in a legal and historical gray area, and that ambiguity alone adds millions to its theoretical worth, because rarity in the coin world is not just about physical flaw, it is about narrative depth, about the layers of speculation and mystery that surround the object, and when you combine extreme mint error, human involvement, manufacturing chaos, unique survival, private trade, rumors, and a total absence of confirmed replicas, the number $135 million starts to make sense in the minds of extreme collectors who chase the impossible, especially in a world where a baseball card or digital artwork can sell for astronomical sums. So why wouldn't a coin representing the failure of a billion-dollar minting system do the same? And that is the essence of why the 2007 D Roosevelt dime has become such a legendary piece in numismatic culture, because somewhere out there, in a vault or private collection, sits a coin that may be physically small but conceptually massive, an object forged accidentally through chaos, preserved through secrecy, and valued through obsession. And if you are listening carefully, you might be thinking to yourself that perhaps any dime in your change could hide such a mystery, because errors do happen, rare mistakes do slip through production lines, and extraordinary coins do emerge from the most ordinary places. So the next time you see a dime with strange colors, doubled letters, missing clad surface, off-center strike, rim distortions, or misaligned portrait, do not ignore it, because you might be looking at the next unimaginable treasure, a coin that demands inspection, research, and preservation. And while most will never reach the status of the $135 million 2007 D dime, every extraordinary discovery begins with someone opening their palm, seeing something strange, and asking the question that every numismatist has asked since coin last 1994 P1 dime coin. Today we dive deep into the astounding story of the 1994 P Roosevelt dime, a coin that has captured the attention of collectors worldwide, and for good reason, because this seemingly small silver-colored coin from the Philadelphia Mint, often overlooked in pocket change or left forgotten in jars on kitchen counters, has become one of the most astonishing and mysterious artifacts in the world of American currency, with rumors, documented minting anomalies and collector speculation pushing its theoretical value into an unbelievable $136 million range thanks to a unique and extraordinary combination of minting errors, striking mistakes, historical context, and the unexpected convergence of production deviations which make it a numismatic legend. So sit back and imagine this tiny coin that millions of people handled in daily life without a second thought suddenly becoming the center of fascination, investigation, and even obsession as collectors attempt to understand how such an ordinary dime could be so extraordinary, because the 1994 P dime is not simply a coin that carries an error or two, but rather an object layered in mystery, where minting processes, metallurgical inconsistencies and striking pressures appear to have collided in a way so unusual that the resulting specimens possess characteristics almost impossible to replicate. And it is precisely this combination of tangible defects, theorized malfunction, and hypothetically extremely low survival rate that sends its value skyrocketing, pushing it beyond mere collectible status and into the realm of legend, making it not only a rare artifact but a mythic one, a piece that continues to generate waves of conversation through the numismatic world. It begins with something deceptively simple, the mint mark P for Philadelphia, which in the 1990s was already well standardized across the Roosevelt dime series, but 1994 introduced some unexpected dynamics as mint machinery began to experience increased wear due to heavy production cycles, and as the presses operated at high speed to keep up with federal supply demands, inconsistencies in die alignment began to appear, and that is one of the key elements behind the rare 1994 P dime specimens, because on certain examples the mint mark is slightly displaced, faintly doubled, or appears blurred as though the metal never fully settled into the die cavity during the strike, and collectors call this a mint mark anomaly, which is the first layer of mystery, because a misaligned mint mark on a coin that should be ordinary creates questions about machine calibration, die fatigue, and metal flow, the subtle contours of the P being stretched like a shadow or even ghosted outward as though a second phantom layer of the letter rises underneath. And this subtle distortion is just one of the many unusual details that make the 1994 P dime so much more valuable than its face value suggests, for imagine the millions of dime coins struck that year and how few would carry not just one identifiable mint error but numerous overlapping anomalies that point to a catastrophic moment in minting rather than a simple isolated glitch. Then there is the infamous full reverse strike misalignment, where the reverse design featuring the torch flanked by an olive branch on the left and an oak branch on the right appears shifted off-center, not drastically like a traditional off-center strike that collectors often see, but at a barely recognizable tilt that gives the torch an exaggerated narrow profile while the branches appear thicker or stretched as if painted by a trembling hand. One of the key qualities that collectors find captivating about these specimens is the subtlety, because major errors are easy to detect and often mass-produced in error runs that the mint captures, classifies, and destroys, but the rarest coins in existence are those that slip through the cracks, those whose deviations are not so dramatic as to catch internal inspection but are nonetheless extraordinary when viewed under magnification by experts with trained eyes, and the 1994 P dime falls beautifully into that category as a subtle error coin, with a low probability of discovery and an even lower likelihood that collectors preserve them intentionally at the time of minting, making any surviving example today essentially a time capsule of mint chaos. The edges of the coin tell yet another story, because many error-focused specimens exhibit what is known as partial reading collapse, a condition in which the raised grooves along the rim appear smoothed, crushed, or interrupted, sometimes only on a thin segment of the coin and sometimes wrapping most of the circumference, and this indicates that the coin may have been struck under insufficient pressure or created during the final stages of die deterioration when the reading collar no longer pressed evenly, which is an extremely rare set of circumstances because minting machines are engineered to maintain consistent collar engagement, and when this engagement weakens it creates a metal flow disturbance producing faint ripples or bulges along the rim that numismatists describe as metal stress signatures, meaning that the material did not fill the die properly, and when these rim distortions combine with mint mark doubling and center strike distortions, the probability of multiple interacting errors skyrockets in value, because collectors searching for rare coins understand something fundamental. A coin with one isolated error is interesting, but a coin with 2, 3, or more interlocking production flaws becomes something else entirely. A coin born of an improbable moment in history where technology, human oversight, and time converge. Another key possibility that heightens the theoretical value of this 1994 P-dime is the presence of planchette anomalies, where the blank pieces of metal used to strike coins contain impurities or surface inconsistencies prior to being stamped, and such flaws can present as tiny pits, diagonal stretching, or cloudy discoloration on the finished coin, and due to how the minting process compresses the metal, these imperfections become locked inside the design like fossilized fingerprints. And while most planchette flaws are destroyed or recycled during quality control, the occasional survivor makes its way into circulation, and when such a survivor also carries multiple strike anomalies, it becomes more valuable than any of its contemporaries, because now the coin is not just an example of failed minting machinery but a naturally occurring anomaly layered with structural error, material impurity, and mechanical defect, each contributing to a single breathtaking specimen that is studied, catalogued, and theorized about in collector circles. Its legend rising because so few examples exist and the chain of events needed to produce them approaches statistical impossibility. The fascinating part about value is that it is rarely defined solely by physical defects. It is deeply influenced by narrative, scarcity, and collector passion, and here the 1994 P-dime's proposed valuation of $136 million represents the climax of all three elements. Because imagine a wealthy collector who has spent decades chasing the missing pieces of numismatic history, someone who sees this dime not as a 9.5-gram hunk of clad metal but as a relic of failure, artistry, and coincidence crafted by forces beyond human control. And to such a collector, the value is not determined by a price guide or auction average but by a desire to own something no one else can possess, because that is the essence of rare coin economics. When an item's existence defies logic, its market transcends traditional pricing. So even if most 1994 P-dimes are worth their face value, the one or two rare survivors exhibiting quadruple layer anomalies could indeed become priceless icons, and when collectors see lightning frozen into metal, they are willing to pay anything to capture it. Consider also the psychology of discovery, because people do not wake up expecting the change in their pockets to be worth the same as multimillion-dollar artworks or luxury estates. And when stories surface of someone uncovering a rare coin by accident, the public imagination ignites, leading more eyes to scan more coins, creating a self-perpetuating search culture, and this hunt transforms ordinary objects into treasure maps, where every coin becomes a potential key to fortune, and the 1994 P-dime occupies a special place within that culture, straddling the line between rumor and fact, myth and mathematics, because while only a tiny fraction of collectors have ever seen a genuine higher example, the mere possibility that such a coin exists pushes attention toward minting history, die wear patterns, strike pressure algorithms, and metallurgical inconsistencies, generating waves of discourse across forums, auction rooms, and personal collections, until the coin is not merely a piece of metal but a phenomenon that forces people to reconsider what value truly means. And this social momentum is part of what gives the coin